right, we're just rolling. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back. We are rolling on. We have taken a 1-second break between our Paladin video and our Priest video. So welcome. This is Witchwood. This is Arena. This is Tierlist, card by card review. And we have all the new Echo numbers in. So it may not be showing here, but we actually have all the numbers. So this will make this go even better.
Okay. So this video, we're talking about the Priest. And the Priest is a class in which, if you can remember, there was a time in which Priest was really bad. Like, really, really, really bad. Extremely terrible class. And it all changed in one fell swoop. And that swoop was called MSG, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so with MSG, Blizzard was just like, we're tired of Priest being bad, essentially. And I can't really speak about Constructed, but within Arena, it's amazing how much Priest changed with just one expansion. I would say it's the biggest impact on any single class with any expansion, right? And I'm not counting like the 10.4 sort of like, because that's not an expansion.
Yep.
But if you look at what Priests are losing, they lose almost nothing from Old Gods, and they lose almost nothing from Karazhan, because that was when Priests were getting nothing, essentially. If you look at the cards in which it's even slightly notable from those expansions, it would be like Power Word Tentacles, Shifting Shade, like cards that you really don't care about. It's like, yeah, they're pretty decent, but
like all those Hunter cards Witchwood added.
Yay.
I'm just trying to depress Merps now.
I know. But let's look at everything that they are losing in MSG. They lose Potion of Madness, like an all-time super premium card. Cabal Talon Priest, win the game on turn 3 if you have a body to buff. They lose Cabal Song Stealer as well, which is like a pretty freaking good card.
Okay, that card is bucketed into like the top tier by Blizzard. So I don't know what the win rates are for that card, but it must be insane. We don't have it rated anywhere near that high.
Yeah, we don't.
But I have no idea what people are silencing. That's so valuable. That is not the case with Spellbreaker. Spellbreaker is bucketed where we have it. Like, I've been checking. It's roughly where our tier list has it.
Yeah. So once again, along with that, they lose Dragonid Operative, which was the anchor to every dragon deck, right? And also just, okay, you don't have a dragon. Now you only have a pit fighter. With a dragon tag on it, right? Like, so it can still be buffed. And they lose Dragonfire Potion. So in this one expansion, like they are losing a ton. They are losing so many tools, and most importantly, they are losing Potion of Madness, which was their anchor in the early game. Dragonfire Potion, which was like their AOE that
their biggest AOE besides Psychic Scream, which is Psychic
Scream, right? And previously, the thing that you had to fear the most was like the combination of the two, right? Yeah. And whenever they play Dragonfire Potion, you're like, okay, now I spread. Now I spread on turn 7. And then they Psychic Scream. You're like, okay, well, now their 2 cards just took out 5 of my cards and I lose. So Priests are losing a ton. And the way that you face Priests changes fundamentally because cards like Potion of Madness, cards like Dragonfire Potion, they're not just powerful cards. They're not just like minions that are good, but you don't play around. Like, this gets inside of your head, and this fundamentally changes.
Can you guys tell how much Merps hates playing against Priest?
Potion Madness is the...
Is it coming through loud and clear? How much like pent-up frustration over the last year this has been?
You can ask any good Arena player.
Oh yeah.
You can ask all the other streamers. It's like top 3 like hated cards. Potion Madness has to be in there, I think. Like, that card should have never been printed. The amount of tempo you get. Okay, I will stop. But the design was extremely poor.
So Merps, what do you think about Keeper of Oldemon?
Oh god. Do you have another hour? I don't have another hour.
Okay. So look, Priest was horrible to play against. It's a lot of like, does the Priest have this card? Because I can't play around it. And if they do, they win. And if they don't, I'm up by a decent amount. Right. That happens a lot with a lot of the Priest things. They're just like the answer class, right? So if they have the answers, they win. If they don't have the answers, they lose. That's kind of what's been happening. And that's frustrating to play against. And I know especially if you listen to the Lightforge, our podcast, if you don't, definitely check it out. We have weekly analysis of the meta and like teaching the arena, also just conversation, all sorts of good stuff. But people who listen to the Lightforge constantly comment like, you guys hate Priest a lot. Because I think at one point for like 5 Lightforges in a row, we just trashed the Priest. Like, even when it wasn't really...
And it was deserved.
That was during the height of the Priest meta. It was, like, not even about the Priest we're doing something, and then we're like, oh, and by the way, like, oh, the Priest is so horrible to face. And, okay, fine, so we trashed on the Priest a lot, but it was really that horrible, because at a certain point, skill goes by the wayside when it's just about, do you draw your answers? Because you definitely draft your answers. Any idiot will do that. And you definitely play the answers when you see the problem come up. Any idiot will do that. And so the only thing left is, do you draw your cards at the right time, and did you get offered the card in the first place? And that's it's good to have that be like tampered down a little, since a lot of those cards are missing. But with a lot of those cards missing, it's now like it's gonna feel pretty easy to face a Priest, I think. Like, what do they have? Like, outside of Psychic Screen? Holy Nova, very easy to play around. Dustbreaker, Dragon Priest is heavily gimped. You're not going to see that many effective Dustbreakers anymore. Like, I don't know what's going on with Priests. They're going to be a pretty normal class that's probably going to suck. So, with that, let's look at the Dragon that's going to, I think, usher back in the old school Priest that we all knew and also did not like, but was at least not absolutely destroying the arena. And that's the, let me try to get some minions on the board and then I'll buff the crap out of them.
Because here's the thing, and just one more like quick meta point. A lot of people complain when like, it's like, oh, this class is at the top. I hate it when this class is at the top. I think a lot of people just hate when any class is at the, like, when a class is at the top, it'll always be annoying, right? Mm-hmm. Any class at the top will be annoying. But as we've seen now in the past year, now that Blizzard has sort of, you know, elevated a lot of different classes to the top.
Nothing is as bad as Priest. When
Priests are at the top of the meta, they are the most oppressive. They are the most annoying. And like...
Paladin is the close second.
Paladin is a fairly close second, like whenever you have that. But it's like whenever you face these classes and they're dominating, like, and then you compare that with when like mages were dominating, right? I would take the mage any day.
Yeah. Like, this is the opinion. Like, I kept saying this when mage had been dominating for like 2 years, and people were like, Adwicta, you suck. What are you doing? Stop saying these things. I used to respect you. You can't possibly be a mage lover. No good arena player likes mage. No skill. And I'm like, no, it's a lot of skill. It's good. It just happens to be overpowered right now. Like, the design is fundamentally solid.
I mean, that criticism was pretty fair. At least the first part was fair. But yes, I do agree. Like, no, you cannot have priests at the top of the meta. It just becomes so unfun, right? Like past the technical points, it's like definitely the least fun meta to be in. Anyways,
so we were gonna try to get this all done by 11 o'clock, right?
Yeah. Don't remind me of that. That was no, you know, someone might have said it. It might have been me. Who knows? 7 mana, 4/9 dragon. Whenever a friendly minion is healed, summon a 3/3 whelp. This essentially just turns your hero power into a really good
ZOMG.
Yeah, ZOMG. Yes. And look, it is very old school Priest, right? Expensive, value oriented, and just but overall
it's really 9 good. Health. Like, try removing that without a hard removal.
Right. But once again, this is one of those things where you know, when you put it out, it doesn't do like that much, right? Obviously, if you put it on turn 9, you can get an additional 3/3 whelp, which is really good. But you know, it's still fairly slow, which is why it's not like super duper premium. But at a 135, you know, you're getting close to some of the best cards in the game.
Yeah, like it's we have it lower than a Northshire Cleric, but not by much. But like, I would contrast this with Violet Worm, which is right next to it, basically the same score. Violet Worm is the tempo, right? Like, it's hard to remove, it's 8 mana, you put it there, it takes your opponent a lot to figure out. Nightskill Matriarch is the slight delayed tempo, but then if you don't remove it, you just lose the game.
Yeah.
Like, and they're very similar in how much of a threat they present, right? They instantly force you to do stuff with it. And again, you need minions on the board for you to heal. Nightscale Matriarch may not be the one you want to damage and then heal back up. So if you do have a board, this is one of those like works better when you already have a board things, which Priest had been getting low on because MSG was all about works better when you don't have the board. And that kind of Priest really took over. But now with what was that card? The buff card?
What?
Why can't I find it? There's a card that buffs the priest.
That buffs the priest?
Yeah. It's like +2/+2, and then it's unidentified. Why is it not showing up?
Unidentified elixir?
Yeah. Is there a
I don't
bug
know.
here?
Yeah, there's probably a bug here.
Okay, unidentified elixir is not showing up on the tier list right now. Well, back when unidentified elixir, it's definitely in the meta. Back when unidentified elixir was in the tier list, as it well should be.
Professionals doing professional work.
It was, you know, it's a 139. It did its job, and it was one of the ways you get a priest, you buff the board, and you go with that. You still have your Northshire clerics in, and now it's even leaning more towards that side than it is towards the control side. Whereas before, it was definitely leaning way heavy towards the control side.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's see.
Yeah. So that dragon's very good. Just FYI,
Yes.
in case we're not there. It's not brokenly good. It's only in the 130s. It's not like 180, right? Like the sword or like
the
150.
speed still holds it back.
Yeah. Holy Water, 5 mana, deal 4 damage to a minion. If it kills it, add a copy of it to your hand. Again, slow. 5 mana, deal 4 damage. Good card. You get to add any minion that you can, want to copy into your hand. If your opponent plays a really good legendary or whatever, just kill it with the Holy Water in a connection with, along with one of your other minions or whatever, and you get that minion in your hand. But at the same time, you're down 1 tempo, right? You are always down 1 tempo.
Yeah. So this is also a card in which you sometimes will want to just hold it, right, to kill off a better minion. You don't really want to kill off like their 3/4, but even in that case, it's like 5 mana to deal 4 damage and like draw kind of like an average-ish card, and a 3 mana 3/4 would be kind of like an average-ish card, right? It's not terrible, so you're definitely gonna have some uses, but yeah, it presents the problem that priests have always had. So once again, going back to classic priests, right, where a lot of value, but just kind of slow and awkward.
One more slow card coming at you. 102, Quartz Elemental, 5 mana, 5/8. Wow, so good. Curve card, can't attack while damaged. Like, if your opponent wants to ping it, it'll force you to heal it and spend 2 mana too. It's not the worst, because your opponent, also spent 2 mana. But more importantly, once this eats something, like let's say it kills a 5/5, it'll take you 3 turns to heal this back up. And that's an investment of like 6 mana. And it doesn't get to attack again for a long time. Like, it's a slow card, but it will anchor you. Like, this is a card that you don't necessarily want to buff, but it'll give you a minion to buff because no one's removing this off the board.
Right, and there is always value in having a minion that will probably last until the next turn, right? Which this will. It has a higher chance of that. So, and if they devote something, to hit into it, what they want to kind of do is to like put 3 damage in, right? Put in 3 damage so you can't really heal it up. But what happens then is they've probably committed their 2 or 3 drop in order
like, it still got some value,
right? It still got some value, and the threat of it is always there. Even if you don't use the next turn, you can use it like some other turn in which you heal it.
Like, so, one of the problems with Priest is that the hero power is useless unless you have something on the board. Well, the hero power is no longer useless, even if this guy gets like kind of sidelined.
Right. So yeah, this is a 102, which means it's not good, but maybe draftable. We'll see what bucket
it's average. It's an average card.
Yeah.
Coffin Crashers, 87. Now we're in bad territory. And you may be wondering, why is this card bad? It's so good. Look at it. It's like Void Caller, and Void Caller was great. It's like Void Caller. It's actually anti-tempo the same way. It's a 6 mana 6/5 instead of a 4 mana 3/4. And it has a Death Rattle. Summon a Death Rattle minion from your hand rather than Death Rattle summon a demon from your hand. And this is at 87, whereas Void Caller would definitely be like, I don't know, maybe like a 120 or something. And that's partly because Void Caller is good for tempo, like on curve. You can summon a very over-tempoed card and kind of win the game there. And it's also because you have demons. You don't really have Death Rattle minions. One of the things that's happening in this upcoming meta is you're going to struggle a bit getting Death Rattle minions. And it's one of those cards where I don't know what its win rate's going to be. I don't know where Blizzard's going to bucket it, but if Blizzard buckets this in any reasonably like okay bucket, don't take it unless you have the Death Rattles. Because you're not going to be like, if you're hunting for Death Rattles, it's a very insecure prospect of being able to get enough like decent Death Rattles to make this trigger.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if Blizzard buckets this in the same bucket that we have it bucketed, for example, which is like pretty bad, then go for it. If you have some Death Rattles, take it. Like even a medium amount of Death Rattles, and then try to pick more Death Rattles as it goes on. Like it's potentially a way to get value, or it's a trap, depending on where Blizzard is bucketing it. Remember, you don't actually just gain a minion. You just gain the tempo of the minion, because you have to have it in your hand. You're losing the card.
Yep. All right.
Okay, next card is Squashling. It is not an 80 because it's an Echo card, and all our Echo cards are differently scored than what's shown here. It's actually an 88, so it's around a Coffin Crasher, which again, below average card, and you can kind of see why. It's a Voodoo Doctor that you can repeatedly cast. It doesn't sound terribly impressive. It's not terribly impressive. Works with the Quartz Elemental, though.
Yeah, definitely does. Yeah, it just faces that problem, right? Where you don't really like it just doesn't do enough. And it doesn't do what priests want to do, which is establish big bodies on the board, right? After a big body is out there, you can repeatedly heal it and put out all these 2/1s. But once again, what you do with these 2/1s kind of goes against what priest wants to do, right? So it's okay. You're gonna pick it sometimes, probably. And there are certain decks in which this can be useful, but
I get the feeling Blizzard's gonna think this card's very good, and you're never gonna pick it. Like this may go into a higher bucket than we think, because this is one of those like classic cards where you're like, oh, Blizzard would think this is good.
I can see that.
They're like all the Arcanine synergies.
Oh my gosh, that is true.
Vivid Nightmare 70. Choose a friendly minion, summon a copy of it with 1 health remaining. So it's a horrible card unless you cast it on something with a Death Rattle or an insane ability. And like I said, not a lot of Death Rattle cards anymore. That's
That's basically it.
I mean, the system knows how many Death Rattle cards are offered and all that stuff. And so we've already adjusted it for this upcoming meta. So it's reading that stuff now.
Yep.
But yeah, like if you have the right deck for it, it's a great way to get value. But otherwise, you're summoning what, like a 6/1 for 3 mana? Really? Do you really want like a Magma Rager?
Yep. All right. So the last card is Divine Hymn, which is a 62 score, 2 mana to restore 6 health to all friendly characters. I mean, this is just a beefed up, better kind of Circle of Healing, right? Instead of
2 more mana.
Right. Well, Circle of Healing only heals minions, and it heals all minions. This heals only your minions, and it heals your face as well. So it's just pure positive. Like, although it doesn't have the Circle of Healing Arcanine synergy.
Look for the synergies with that card, right? Like when you need to heal when you have a lot of like Norshar clerics or like that dragon thing, or the Onyx, like you can synergize, right? Like you look at all these priest cards, and what do they all kind of do? Even the bad ones, they synergize together. Like I don't think priest is going to be necessarily hurting in constructed, because this seems like a pretty synergistic package. But in the arena, you got to put them all together, and if you don't, then it's going to be like a kind of mediocre priest that you're looking at.
Okay, so those are the common, rare, and epic cards for priest. Let's go and look at the legendaries now. This is a card that's fairly interesting. I definitely want to talk about it. Chameleos, 1 mana, 1/1. Each turn this is in your hand, transform it into a card your opponent is holding. So let's look at some like the pros and cons of this card and how it shakes out. Because I think some people will think that this card is really, really good. They're like, oh, you should get so much information. And you will get a lot of information. But once again, remember that the tier list is for, we're assuming that you are infinite. This is for a player that is, like very complete. And the better of a player you are, the less you need this information, because the more like you already know the information. And a lot of the times you're just like, because I can see a response now. It's like, Merps, that's BS. Like, I've seen your streams. You don't know like exactly what cards they have. And no, I don't. But I know like generally what they have. Like if they have removal, if they have AoE, if they have a buff, or like, sort of like how awkward their turn 2 was, how awkward their turn 3 was. This is information that I've already picked up. So even if I don't know exactly what the card is, I know their hand pretty well. And what this does is it introduces, like, so going to the cons, it introduces awkwardness, right? Like the same reason that we see a lot of these transform every single turn it's in your hand. It introduces a lot of awkwardness, and a lot of times you just can't play it. So the pros are you gain advantages in the information you receive. But if you're a good player, you don't gain as much as other players in terms of information. However, if you're a good player, you want more options because you can utilize those options better than an average player. But you, on average, lose those options, and you lose your ability to turn plan as well because of this card. So you can see this card. It's very interesting. I love the design of it, but it tilts like away from sort of the better players. And if you're the sort of player that like, you didn't have very good reads, you need this information. Like this is much better in like the hands of that sort of player. So anyways, that was sort of my thought when I was thinking about this card. I was just like, it's cool. It's a great design, but like the better of a player you are, the more it shifts against you.
Also, if your opponent has no hard cards, it's a 1 mana 1/1 beast.
Also that. Okay. Yes, that. So that is a consideration as well.
Okay, so that was a 100, totally playable card. Lady in White, 6 mana 5/5. Battlecry, cast Inner Fire on every minion in your deck. Unless you get this early on and you draft a deck based on that, that's just not going to do all that much for you. Because you are going to have a mixed deck. And otherwise, it's not even in your hand. So you can't control any of this stuff, and it's 6 mana 5/5, not a good card. Don't take it. If you take it, make sure that your deck is already fitting it, or it's very early on. In your draft.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Priest. Any last words?
No, that's about it.
Just remember, if you're drafting Priest, there's a lot more board focus on Priest. Like, you may actually want to take some 2-drops in Priest, because the control Priest is not working as well anymore after these after the cards have rotated out of the meta. And a lot of the new cards work really well with buffing stuff on the board and having stuff to heal on the board. So definitely consider some, if not 1-drops, at least 2-drops. Definitely anchor down your 3. That's how Priest is going in this meta. Okay. Next up is Rogue. This is Adwicta. That is Merps. We are the Grinning Goat. See you in Rogue.